Imagine this. You're enjoying a vacation at a 5-star beachfront hotel in Bali, warm golden lights, the gentle sound of waves, the scent of sea salt, and a cocktail in your hand. A perfect scene, but in the quiet of that night, you suddenly hear strange sounds. At first, just vague noises, then clearer, like sounds of struggle, intermittent groans, and finally cries for help echoing from the hallway. A young couple, wealthy, famous, and on a luxury vacation, had now become the center of one of Asia's most mysterious and shocking murder cases. What really happened in that room, and why do so many people believe this wasn't an ordinary crime, but a bloody message? In May 2023, at the Intercontinental Bali, a place that should have only existed for poolside cocktails and sunset dinners, something bizarre occurred. A guest staying there suddenly heard inexplicable sounds from the adjacent room. Not a TV turned up too loud, nor like a typical argument. The guest, though confused, remained calm and called down to the front desk. He wasn't sure if it was an accident, a heart attack, or a crime unfolding behind that door. Hotel staff received the complaint, but it took nearly 20 minutes before anyone bothered to check. After all, noise complaints between rooms weren't unusual in such luxurious places. Sometimes it was just someone who'd had too much to drink or a couple having a minor dispute. But when that staff member stepped out of the elevator and walked toward the end of the hallway, he seemed to step into a horror movie scene. On the polished tile floor, amid a pool of dark red blood lay the naked body of a young man. His body was cut in multiple places, blood flowing in long streaks leading back to the room he had rented. Since the room door was still open, it could be concluded that he was still alive when attacked, and in a moment of desperation, he had crawled out of the room seeking help. Following the blood trail scattered on the stone floor, the hotel employee entered the room where the nightmare began. There he discovered the second body, a young woman only 21 years old, also naked, lying motionless in the bathtub. The room was silent as if time had stopped. Outside, the sun was rising over Bali's beach. Inside, 2 lives had permanently ended, leaving countless unanswered questions. Police quickly arrived. Through identification documents and hotel information, the victims' identities were confirmed as Li and Chang, a Chinese couple who had checked in less than 12 hours earlier. But Li wasn't an ordinary man. He was a cryptocurrency mogul, a young millionaire famous in Asia's investment circles. A sudden death, a wealthy, beautiful couple fallen in paradise. And a series of questions arose. What really happened that fateful night? How did a couple living a dream life end in such a horrific tragedy? Before diving into the investigation full of suspicions, let's talk a bit about this couple. Li wasn't born into a wealthy family. On the contrary, his childhood was filled with hardship and difficulty. His mother, a single woman, had him when she was very young. Without a husband, without anyone beside her. She had to work every job to raise her child. From serving in restaurants to hourly cleaning work. But then, after many years, the boy who once wore hand-me-downs to school suddenly reappeared on social media in photos gleaming with glory. Li, now 25, drove supercars, wore expensive watches, traveled to luxurious places with his girlfriend Chang, a beautiful girl who was only 21. No one knew how Li had become so wealthy in such a short time. He didn't come from a wealthy family, nor had he ever been known for any major business deals. Perhaps it was through college connections. Perhaps he had entered fields that ordinary people never touch, and if they do, they can never get out. But however it happened, one thing was undeniable: Li was truly a millionaire. And his life, at least on social media, was filled with light. Trips to Europe, dinners on yachts, and countless sweet moments with Jung. They had known each other for 2 years. In the eyes of friends and family, they were the perfect couple, both beautiful and deeply in love. This couple spent most of their time touring the world's most exotic and luxurious places, especially Southeast Asia. Kun's Instagram was filled with images from beachside resorts, villas, and tropical forests, and candlelit dinners on deserted islands. They were always in some new paradise, as if living in a luxury travel magazine. Then in April 2023, they chose Bali as their next destination. But their trip wasn't like a typical vacation. From here, everything began to become strange. First, Lee and Kun didn't fly to Bali together. Lee departed from China while Jung started from Thailand. They met in Bali but didn't immediately go to the Intercontinental Hotel, which later became the crime scene. For some unclear reason, the couple had rented another hotel before moving to the Intercontinental. This puzzled many people because they weren't planning to stay in Bali long, nor were they visiting other cities. Who goes on vacation for just a week but has to change hotels midway, packing luggage, moving out, moving in, calling rides, checking in twice? That alone would be enough to make people give up the idea. It's not typical behavior for ultra-wealthy travelers, people who prefer convenience and efficiency. What made them change hotels? What were they trying to avoid, or whom? Jung arrived first. Since all the room booking procedures were done under her name around 8 p.m. on April 30th, she was present in the Intercontinental Bali lobby with a gentle smile and striking beauty in her elegant travel dress. 4 hours later, around 12:17 a.m., Lee appeared. He had just arrived from Nagarai International Airport, where he landed late after a direct flight from China. Security cameras captured the moment they met in the lobby. A quick hug, a few whispered words enough to show they were familiar and close. Then both entered the elevator, heading to their room. That was also the last time Jung was seen alive. An hour later, Lee was recorded by cameras stepping out of the room alone. He wore casual clothes, walked slowly, his eyes scanning the hallway as if looking for something. At 1:20 a.m., the couple ordered room service. A staff member brought food to their room. Nothing unusual, no signs of tension, no signs of arguing. Everything passed by strangely peaceful. Night slowly fell over Bali's beach. Sea breeze whispered through the coconut palms. In the luxury resort, gentle lights cast from balconies, blending with distant wave sounds. Guests were sleeping soundly, enjoying their dream vacation. No one knew that in room 4223, something terrible was about to happen. The next morning, around 6:30, the door to room 4223 suddenly opened. Lee staggered out completely naked with blood flowing all over his body. He began crawling on the hallway floor, making weak cries for help, leaving behind a long trail of blood. Security camera footage showed Lee had endured this condition for at least 20 minutes, crawling in the hallway, begging for help in extreme pain and severe blood loss. During this time, another guest heard unusual sounds from the floor above. Although they couldn't see anything, they called down to the front desk to report. As mentioned, the hotel staff's response was quite slow. They took a very long time before deciding to check the situation. When someone finally arrived at the scene, Lee had fallen unconscious and died from excessive blood loss. Notably, throughout this process, security cameras recorded no one else besides Lee and Chang entering or leaving that fateful room. Lee's body suffered severe injuries with more than 20 cuts, including to particularly deep wounds on his neck and leg. However, the wounds were distributed across his body, including his back, a detail that would become important in later analysis. Autopsy results showed these wounds weren't caused by a knife, but by broken glass shards. What's notable is that most cuts were quite shallow, explaining why Lee could survive and endure for more than 20 minutes. The final cause of death was determined to be excessive blood loss. Another aspect of the case was hotly debated by the online community, though no official agency involved in the investigation mentioned it. Regrettably and inhumanly, crime scene photos were leaked and spread on the internet, something I completely condemn for its immorality and lack of respect. Based on these images, many people concluded that Lee's genitals had been completely severed. If Lee's body shocked hotel staff, Then Kun's body, his girlfriend, left police standing silent before the bathtub, still warm with water. Unlikely, Jung didn't die from blood loss. She didn't have the cruel cuts slashed across her flesh, but her body told a story full of desperation and resistance. On Chung's forehead, hands, and legs were chaotic scratches, like traces of his struggle in a confined space. But most notable were the unusual bruises around her neck, typical signs of strangulation from behind. A large amount of foam was found pouring from the victim's nose and mouth. This phenomenon, according to forensic experts, usually occurs when someone drowns while conscious. That is, Jung may have been repeatedly submerged in water, each time struggling in panic, trying to surface to breathe, then being forced down again. The continuous up and down movement created foam in the mouth cavity, producing what's called death foam. She didn't die immediately, but had to endure a series of moments of ultimate terror amid water, soap, and invisible cruelty. Police later conducted toxicology tests on both victims. Results ruled out any possibility of poison, drugs, sleeping pills, pesticides, or stimulants, including alcohol, despite the room being full of open bottles. In other words, everything that happened occurred in a sober, conscious, and completely real state. No one was poisoned, no one was intoxicated. Both knew exactly what they were experiencing, and no one came to save them. So, what really happened in Lee and Cheng's final hours? A young, wealthy couple living the life everyone dreams of. Yet in just one night, they became the main characters in a brutal case, leaving countless unanswered questions. Who could be so cruel, for love or money? About 2 weeks after the tragedy, police issued a shocking public statement. They would officially close the case with the declaration that all issues had been completely resolved. Were any suspects arrested? You're probably wondering that. The answer is no. Instead, police simply concluded that Lee Jamin himself was the sole perpetrator of the entire case. They outlined a closed criminal scenario that before coming to the Intercontinental Hotel, the couple had stayed at another location. There they were said to have had a major argument to the point where Jung couldn't stand it anymore. Booked a new room herself under her name only, then left to avoid her boyfriend. This, according to police, explained the detail of why the two arrived at the hotel at different times and why the room booking was only under Chong's name. Perhaps afterward, the two met in the lobby, made up, and decided to spend their last night together in the luxury hotel room before continuing their trip or returning to China. But that night, according to police, the conflict erupted once again. The hypothesis suggested that Lee in a blind rage attacked Jung right in the bathtub with broken glass shards, killed her, then inflicted wounds on himself to end his own life. They believed that no one else appearing on security cameras, no signs of break-in, no stolen items, and no foreign DNA traces all supported this hypothesis. A case of romantic conflict, a simple tragedy, but was everything really that simple? The police hypothesis that Lee killed his girlfriend, then committed suicide at first glance seems complete and reasonable. This hypothesis would also explain why the couple was found dead with no one caught on security cameras entering or leaving the hotel room. Additionally, nothing was stolen from the room and both were wealthy, so they must have had very expensive items and nothing was stolen. No traces were found suggesting anyone else was in the room besides them, like fingerprints, blood, and DNA. But just scratch beneath that surface and you'll see a series of points so illogical they're suspicious. First, if Lee truly intended suicide, why would he choose such a slow, painful, and unusual method as using broken glass shards? Not a knife, not a typical sharp object, but broken bottle pieces, making death slow. Lee's entire body had more than 20 cuts, but most were shallow wounds, only causing light bleeding. Was he really trying to end his life, or was he being tortured? More importantly, Lee's back also had many cuts, something nearly impossible if he inflicted them himself. Unless he could twist his arms backward like a professional contortionist, It doesn't make sense. And if the goal was suicide, why did he crawl out of the room bloody all over to seek help? A murderer who just killed his lover, according to police hypothesis, should have locked the door or ended himself in the room. But instead, Lee crawled out to the hotel hallway. Then comes a detail that increases suspicion even more. There were no fingerprints of Lee on the glass bottles supposedly used as weapons. How could the murder weapon not bear the fingerprints of its user? Or did it bear someone else's fingerprints, someone who was never mentioned? At this point, everything began to smell of cover-up. Family, friends, the online community, and those interested in the case all shared one feeling. Something was very wrong with the police conclusion. And from that feeling, other hypotheses began to emerge. Darker, more complex, and possibly more believable. When the case was announced, the online community immediately erupted. A series of questions began appearing, all revolving around one common point. Was Lee really the perpetrator? Because according to what people knew about him, a young successful man with no criminal record, no history of violence, living a dream life with the girl he loved, the murder-suicide scenario presented by police sounded absurdly cruel. Both Lee and Chung's families flatly rejected that hypothesis. They believed this couple truly loved each other, had plans to marry, and had absolutely no conflicts that would lead to tragedy. Nothing in this case fit Lee's character unless there was something police were trying to hide or overlook. And then independent investigations began, not from journalists, but from netizens themselves, keyboard detectives. They found a small but important detail. Lee and Chung's room had a balcony with fairly easy access, not within direct camera observation, not overly secured. And the question arose, could someone have snuck in from the balcony, killed both, then disappeared without a trace? From here, a more frightening hypothesis began spreading. Could someone among the hotel staff have colluded with the killer? Could someone have helped cover up the crime, cleaning the scene, delaying police notification, or even destroying evidence? But what angered the public more than anything wasn't just the police's hasty conclusion, but how the hotel handled the incident. According to the testimony of staff on duty that day, after receiving a call from another guest reporting strange sounds, they didn't immediately go check. Instead, they said they had to go find a wheelchair to help a guest who might be sick. Absurd. The caller only said they heard sounds. Someone might be unwell. Never said someone fell, was injured, or needed mobility assistance. In that case, what made them need to get a wheelchair before knowing what was really happening? If it was screaming or collision sounds, the first reaction should have been to check immediately, not to look for a wheelchair like in a comedy sketch. That was the first loophole. The second loophole, why didn't anyone check the security cameras of that floor right after the complaint? A 5-star hotel like Intercontinental supposedly has a 24/7 surveillance system. So why wasn't anyone manning the security room when the incident occurred? And if there was, why didn't anyone see a naked man crawling out of a room with blood all over the hallway? This is a top international resort, a major brand, and every hallway, every floor, every walkway has surveillance cameras. And finally, something that further angered the community was the crime scene cleanup. Right after police finished their preliminary investigation, the hotel immediately had all the hallway carpets replaced on the floor where the case occurred. Every blood trace, every possibility of reconstructing the scene vanished within hours. Why did they do it so quickly? Why did it take over 20 minutes to discover the bodies, but only minutes to erase all traces? Of course, from the perspective of an international hotel still operating, rapid cleanup could be understood. Who would want to stay in a room or hallway soaked with dead people's blood? And according to official information, they only began cleaning after police completed evidence collection. But for many people, that still wasn't convincing enough. They didn't believe in coincidence, they believed something bigger was being hidden. And if that's true, then the only remaining question is, who are they hiding for? From here, the two most controversial hypotheses began spreading across Chinese social media and quickly reached the international community. Some people online began wondering Li was a millionaire at 25, regularly flaunting his luxurious lifestyle on social media. Could he have become someone's target? Cryptocurrency, as everyone knows, is an asset type that's hard to control and trace, very different from cash or traditional bank accounts. And since nothing was taken from the room, many believe the perpetrator didn't come to steal physical objects, but may have taken something that leaves no trace, such as cryptocurrency storage devices, cold wallets, or digital wallet login information. Had someone been following the couple, was their death related to conflicts in the cryptocurrency investment world? That's something no one, including police, confirmed. But online, this hypothesis spread quickly and was shared by many. Li possessed such a massive cryptocurrency fortune that it certainly couldn't fail to attract attention from those with bad intentions. In the cryptocurrency community, he was considered a whale, a term for individuals holding extremely large amounts of cryptocurrency. From this, a bold hypothesis emerged. Could one or more attackers have infiltrated the couple's room that fateful night through the balcony, the only point not covered by security cameras, with the sole purpose of seizing this cryptocurrency fortune? And could some hotel staff have participated in the conspiracy to cover up the crime in exchange for a share of a lot in gains? This theory could explain many mysterious details of the case. The couple being found naked could be because they were enjoying a romantic night in the bathtub when completely surprised by the attack. The mostly shallow cuts on Li's body also fit the assumption that he was tortured long-term until forced to reveal his cryptocurrency wallet access keys. However, forensic evidence showed a different picture. Police found no traces of a third party at the scene. No foreign fingerprints, no blood or DNA from outsiders. Despite this, some netizens still doubted the investigation's objectivity, even suggesting the possibility that police had been bribed. Of course, as emphasized, these are just baseless speculations. There's no convincing evidence supporting this story, and no official agency involved in the investigation believes this scenario actually occurred. Now we turn to the second hypothesis, a much darker scenario. According to this theory, Li may not have earned his massive fortune through legal cryptocurrency investment, but through illegal activities. His death could be brutal payback from the very criminal organization he once served. This shocking hypothesis appeared on the YU, China's equivalent of Google, and quickly spread through the online community. Many people expressed skepticism about Li's meteoric success story. How could a 25-year-old with no family background accumulate millions in such a short time? This suspicion was reinforced when, in an interview, Li's own mother frankly admitted she had no idea how her son made money, didn't even know his monthly income. What she knew was limited to Li working in finance. According to netizens providing this information, Li had used cryptocurrency as a sophisticated tool to launder dirty money from black market activities. However, danger arose when he began secretly intending to divert part of this money into his own pocket. This reckless action made him a target for assassination by the criminal organization he once served. A notable detail pointed out by amateur analysts was Li's unusual behavior when entering the hotel. From security camera footage, he appeared extremely anxious and vigilant, constantly looking around in all directions in the hallway, paying attention to every surrounding room. These signs could indicate Li was already aware he was being watched or hunted. This hypothesis also provided reasonable explanations for the couple's previous strange behaviors. Their constant travel throughout Southeast Asian countries might not just be a hobby, but because this was the main operating region of that criminal organization. The habit of only booking rooms under Cheng's name and frequently changing hotels during the same trip could be evasion tactics. They knew they were being pursued and tried to mislead their hunters. The post suggested an even more chilling speculation about the motive for creating this horrific crime scene. The criminals may have deliberately created such a gruesome massacre as a deterrent message. They might even have forced Lee to crawl out of the room in a dying state to create a horrifying scene. As a living warning to others in the organization, this is what happens when you dare steal our money. However, like the first hypothesis, this theory completely lacks substantial evidence to prove it. The case has no new developments. Indonesian police officially closed the file with the conclusion that Lee killed his girlfriend, then committed suicide, and with that, the case was declared closed. How do you think caused the horrific deaths of Lee and Jung? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for following and see you in the next.